Welcome to Between Two Molars, an open conversation of the wins, setbacks, and messy middle of business ownership. A new kind of podcast that pulls back the curtain. No fluff, real conversations, real lessons, and the real life of running an orthodontic practice. So sit back between two molars and let's get into it. Welcome to Between Two Molars, the space where real orthodontic conversations happen.
I'm Diana Weaver.
And I'm Michelle Shimmin. Together, we're diving into the real-life challenges, wins, and wisdom from inside orthodontic practices.
It's time to talk between two molars.
So today's conversation is about systems in the practice and when systems only exist in your head and why many practices stall operationally. And I find that this originates when we have an owner bottleneck. Not only is it demonstrated and it's the example given to additional leaders in the practice, but this is really something that is not uncommon when practitioners especially start their practice because they have to wear many hats and they are doing so many of the operational systems. It's also their baby. Like doctors, we recognize and understand that this is something that you have worked so hard for and now you're bringing to fruition. And so today our goal is to arm you with an understanding of how you can reduce that owner bottleneck, reduce your decision fatigue, and empower your team to be able to make those decisions outside of your direct communication or impact and to be able to reduce that decision fatigue for you.
Because that's where trust in the founder, the doctor, relaying down to the team member. The team member wants to fulfill a need for the doctor. They want to help facilitate those decisions
and succeed at
it and create those solutions for the practice. But oftentimes we see that the decisions and the workflow lives up here with the doctor and not written down on paper. So documented processes are the first and foremost easiest way to instill that trust factor with the team members.
That is paramount in every position within the practice. As the practice grows and the needed positions and the number of people in the practice grow, the documented positions in regards to job descriptions, daily, weekly, monthly expectations, those absolutely need to be documented and provided very clearly to each team member and each position within the practice. But I want to talk a little bit about even just a task or an effort. And I find this a lot in a marketing effort a practice is talking about. So this might not be something that's specifically written down around one job description, but it's a conversation happening within a business meeting and a team member takes responsibility. I can do this project. I can take point on this. And there is a lack of written down expectations around this particular project. Deadlines with those expectations. And this is something that we want to encourage you, doctor, especially to understand the value of this, to take what's in your head, those expectations, those desires, the outcome that you are looking for, and put it down on paper to remove
perceptions
and feelings and interpretations, because those interpretations vary from person to person and from the doctor. And that's where we will oftentimes see, especially around this example with a marketing effort, fail with a practice, or a lot of disappointment happen with the doctor and frustration that team members are incompetent or they're not following through with what's talked about and discussed. And I don't typically observe a lack of follow through as much as a missed target.
Ooh.
And if those are not translated from the doctor's mind and what the doctor's desires are and put down on paper for the team member to remove any misinterpretation, it feels like a moving target. And there's a lot of resentment that's cultivated out of something like this.
So when we talk about a target, we're talking about what the end result is, what's the outcome for this marketing effort in your example. Mm-hmm. It's also where your KPIs or your key performance indicators are within your system. So as we have that founder bottleneck or that doctor bottleneck, when the doctor does outline these expectations clearly, we also need to know where we want to land, where the team member needs to land. What is success for the team member so that they know what that success level is?
Not just overall with the whole practice, but with every individual task and area within their job and their expectations in their role, I think is really important as well. When we can look at each one of those areas or each of those little nuances and ensure that they're going to land and hit that target, cultivating the ultimate success overall with the practice, it's really powerful.
And removing the potential for miscommunication, providing the team members with a roadmap is also very important. So we can tell them what we want, we can tell them where we land, but the getting there point from point A to point B can be very different. So I think of it as Apple Maps. We went on a road trip recently, and so we could get from Arkansas to Colorado, and it took us the fastest route, and it took us the slowest route, or a different route. So we need to clearly define what route do we need to take that is going to be the most efficient, the most effective use of these team members' times as well.
And make sure that if the doctor doesn't have to be on the same route but is aware of what the team member's route is. I love that analogy and that word picture because it's so true. And I see a lot of frustration with team members that are just striving to please the doctor, striving to succeed in their role. And there's a lot of frustration and resentment and a message of, I can never make them happy. And the whole key to this is a lack of effective communication. They're speaking different languages. And when we dive in to implement the proper systems to provide clarity in the communication, in those expectations, those benchmarks along the way to ensure that, yes, in fact, we're still on the proper path that's expected and we're going to hit our targets. That's where we can really cultivate success. And in doing that, it empowers the team. The team member wants to just continue to thrive, continue to perform and deliver to the doctor. And doctors, this frees you up. This is something that I don't know of any doctor that would say, no, I want to do more work in my practice.
No.
Most doctors are saying, I wish my team members would step up and do what I need them to do, what's expected of them in their role. And it's a lack of communication in this process. And
a lack of documented processes. So the how-to of step 1, step 2, step 3, that documentation can really help a world of things within your practice. It can help with training processes. It helps with that clarity and communication. It helps with so many different defining moments because when you have legacy team members that have been there for a long time and they know it, they've got it living in their brain, and then the natural attrition of the practice and they leave, where are those processes? Where do they live? How do we find them? So we need to make sure that there's clear documentation on what those expectations are to remove a lot of those perceptions.
I want to revisit with this because I want to talk about the benefit also of onboarding and and how that can really streamline an onboarding process. But before we go there, I want to touch on what we were just talking about in the sense that, yes, it absolutely should be in the big picture and big processes within the practice, but I also don't want to devalue the little decisions. I had an example over the holidays where a doctor said, I want a more liveliness within our practice. I want decoration. Let's decorate for some holidays. I want my team more vested in the patient experience with this. And so the doctor was going to arm the team members and say, hey, can you guys decorate? And can you do this? I'll empower you to do this. And that's where the conversation stopped. What ended up happening was way too much money was spent, and completely wrong decorations were even set up and purchased. And so it was something that created a lot of frustration out of the doctor. I just have to do it myself. And a lot of frustration out of the team members because they really were excited to try. It was a missed opportunity and completely missing the mark and empowering our team members to succeed, to take point on this and to remove all of those tasks having to be done by the doctor. And it was because of the communication didn't go deep enough. It didn't go granular enough in what was expected, how it was going to be done, and so forth.
And what the budget was.
What the budget was, what type of decoration. So it is even small conversations and tasks because those compound.
Right.
And that creates and supports a thriving culture of team members that feel empowered and appreciated, or a culture where team members feel like they can never make the doctor happy and the doctor feels like they have to do everything. So it's not just the big picture, although I want to dive into that now, talking about the benefit of, just continue to build on what this topic is and what it provides the practices to document the expectations, document what the processes are, and then we can move into the ease in onboarding.
And revisiting those documented processes. So in your example, I also had a doctor that I was visiting with just within the past month or two that we switched from more analog treatment modalities to he was using Lightforce,
Digital.
and so we were using digital treatment modalities, and the standard operating procedures in his clinic needed to be completely revamped. We identified that because we had some pain points that were happening. The bonding procedures maybe weren't going as smoothly as we had anticipated them to go, and it was a pure and simple getting his expectations out of his head and putting them down on paper, step 1, step 2, step 3, so that the team members could feel empowered with how they actually bond this new treatment modality.
With AI technologies that we have now, this is very, very quick to do. Very, very easy to do. And there's no reason within a practice that you shouldn't have, doctors, I'm talking to you, that you should not have your standard operating procedures and expectations down to how your technicians seat your patients, what you want them to brief you on, but also your employee handbook, your expectations, your job descriptions, and the outline of each role. It really does not take long, and it can be fully customized to your practice and your needs very quickly. But in documenting that, it's important that every team member understands it, recognizes it, and that those become the agreements within the practice.
Because those verbal instructions fail oftentimes because verbal instructions get misinterpreted, miscommunicated, that misunderstanding can happen, and that's where that trust deteriorates.
Anybody that has played the game of telephone knows that.
Yes.
So I think that you're right, that verbal communication is not what needs to be depended on when we have expectations out of somebody. Has to be documented, has to be written down step by step and agreed upon. And that's where we're going to arm team members to be successful. We're going to empower the team members to be successful with that. And it also removes that disappointment that the doctor feels and builds the trust that you just referenced. Because the more we get to know each other, the more we understand the expectations, trust is built, and then more responsibility is typically given.
So we talked about the bottleneck piece and the importance, though, what's in it for us, what's in it for the doctor, the importance of getting your systems in a written, documented form, because can we talk a little bit more about the training processes? Because that's gonna set your new team members up to be as successful as possible. When you have week 1 onboarding, week 2 onboarding, week 3 onboarding, week 4 onboarding, do you doctors, office manager, do you have a clear onboarding module in place so that we know we're not missing anything in our onboarding processes? We're dotting our I's, we're crossing our T's, but we're setting these new team members up to have a good, solid foundation upon which to build. You can't jump into what you would know in week 4 all the way in week 1. We've got to get acclimated. New hires need to get acclimated to your team, to your workflows, to the software, to the practice as a whole. So you need a solid foundation that builds upon itself in your onboarding modules.
It should be also compounding and foundational. Now, the one aspect that I really like about this process that you're sharing right now is that it allows new team members to be vested in their own training and onboarding. I don't want new team members to be passive participants to their training process. I would love our process that we provide practices is that we have a week 1 onboarding expectation, but that the new team member is the one that's driving that. I've mastered this. Can I get this checked off? Can I present it to the doctor? I've now mastered this. Can I get this checked off and approved? And that then becomes that foundational training process, but you have a team member that's vested in their own training protocol as well. And that is where you can create and develop a very thorough team member that is truly vested in their position and in their future growth and professional development, which is really important. Again, we don't want to facilitate a clock in, clock out mentality with our team members. We want team members that are very vested in their role and in any potential growth opportunities that they might have within the practice.
Yes, so building on that foundation is important. So your week 1 builds on, or your week 2 builds on week 1, your week 3 builds on week 1 and 2, writing things down. It's also important, I know this is a little off topic, but it's really important for your trainer to know how to train your new hires.
Just because you're good at something doesn't mean you're a good
trainer.
Yeah.
So, and understanding the learning style of your new hire as well. How do they learn best? Are they written notes? Are they verbal? Are they auditory learners? Don't get frustrated. I think my advice would be to trainers, don't get frustrated when your new hires ask questions, because the questions are what's going to help them learn and grow in this new role. If the questions are repetitive, that's when we have some concern. But your questions and the curiosity of that training is what's going to be the most important, I think, for laying that good, solid foundation for them.
And don't be afraid to ask the new team members, is this training landing with you? Is this effective training for you? Is there something that I could be doing differently that would support you better? And sometimes we observe it every day. Sometimes team members will say, let me get in and do it. And can you observe and provide feedback? Other times they'll say, can I watch you do it and take notes before I do it? And so it is very, very important that your trainers know how to train. And because again, I'm going to say it, doctor, just because a team member is good at their role doesn't mean they are a good trainer. And there can be a tremendous breakdown if we don't understand that. I also want to touch on, because I see in the financial coordinator role, a lot of those processes and protocols live in
your brain,
in the head, in your head, in the financial coordinator's head. And I want to recognize that operational freedom comes from structure. And this is going to, especially to talk about the financial coordinator position, get those structures, get those operational protocols out of the head and documented, because that clarity to the team supports that team member. God forbid if something were to happen and that team member could not show up to work that day. It also protects the doctor, because there's a lot of fear and a lot of panic if something were to happen to a lot of the financial coordinators out in practices. And it's really important that we have really clear documented systems and protocols around the financial coordinator position, and it doesn't just live up in somebody's head. You know, when I'm coaching, I'll be talking with a financial coordinator, and we'll be going through, for instance, the past due delinquency reports. And I will be questioning large amounts or, an extended period of time with no payment. And they'll say, oh, well, I know this patient, or I know this insurance company, or I know this, or I know that, and they pay this way or they do that. Needs to be documented into that software and removed out of one individual's head. So I'm going to say this again. Operational freedom comes from structure and documentation. And doctors want operational freedom.
Well, so we talked about why all of that operational freedom is important. We talked what to do about it. let's talk about how. How do they go about actually creating these systems and processes? I can share what I like to do. I like to have the team members themselves start that foundation, because it gives us a lot of understanding and clarity with what is their interpretation,
Their understanding of what they do.
of what that is.
Absolutely.
And then it helps our doctors and our office managers, the leaders in the practice, it helps them recognize, okay, does my team member have an understanding of what's in my head or my expectation? Where am I missing the mark here?
Where's the disconnect?
And how can I help create a solid foundation for them to build? Also, selfishly, if I was a doctor, I wouldn't all of the burden of creation doesn't fall on me. At least I have some sort of framework to build upon. I can tweak it how I need to tweak it.
You know what? I love that you brought that up, to have the team members, because one, we can celebrate. It gives us a great opportunity to celebrate all that they're doing. It allows us a broad overview of all the responsibilities in the practice to help support and ensure that those responsibilities are evenly distributed.
Yes.
I love that you touched on that it provides an understanding of what each team member's perception is on what they do. And when we do this exercise in practices, we identify a lot of miscommunication, a lot of breakdown, and a lot of disconnect in those systems, which are great opportunities. You know, we talk about great opportunities all of the time, and this is what this should be about. An opportunity to remove a lot of the operational stress off of the doctors by getting it out of their head, getting the goals, the expectations, the step-by-step process out of your head, documented down, that we can have these agreements with our team members, because that's where we get to hold them accountable. Right. We get to hold people accountable to what those agreements are. And if they're not, delivered clearly or understood clearly, we're not going to have that same level of high accountability within that process as well. So it's really important that we remove the decision fatigue, and that we are able to proceed through our day-to-day processes and protocols successfully by delivering on what's expected, by being able to meet those benchmarks and those key performance indicators ultimately at the end, because this will empower our team members. It will support our team members to be able to take ownership, new team members to take ownership with their onboarding and their training protocol, so they're vested in their role and in their own professional growth and development within the practice. Every doctor wants team members like this, and to avoid that clock in, clock out mentality. But most importantly, we want to remove that decision fatigue and that operational weight off of the doctors. Doctor, put a comment. We'd love to hear from you. If this is something that you would love to see, or if this is something that you've experienced or that you found success in transferring the operational weight off of your shoulders, we'd love to hear from you about this. We see the tremendous value for the doctors, for the team members, because it does support and cultivate a team that's empowered, that's not fearful of always doing something wrong, and that it provides clarity in where those targets are, and it's not a consistently moving target.
And it creates and builds that trust that we're all looking for.
Absolutely.
So thanks for joining us Between Two Molars. Until next time, keep leading, keep learning, and keep smiling.
Please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you next time Between Two Molars.